Could you give us sort of the potted Milton Jones approach to a one-liner?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's several different approaches. So I will just become aware of a metaphor or a turn of phrase, and I think I have a sort of fascination with words. I wouldn't even say it's a love of words. I just think they're weird things.
That's nicely put. You must love words. God, no. They're weird.
I sort of feel like holding it up like this and going, why if we say it one way, it means one thing, and why if we say it another way, it means something else. And if you say it with an accent, it means something completely different.
Of course,
so,
yes.
Say something like... something in the zeitgeist, like being gluten intolerant.
Yeah.
I think, well, that's a new thing. I should have something to say about that. And then gluten, and play around. I'll be doodling, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I realise that the word Luton is in there.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not a great place, Luton, is it? And then I'll play around with the least number of words to get to the picture.
Gotcha.
And eventually I will come up with, I was just to the north of London, but it turns out I'm Luton intolerant. Like a lot of people these days, I think that's an important
Yes, that's an important part, yes.
Important part, just to give them the, to sell the dummy.
Yes.
That I might be able to, that's the sort of sentence you would have with that phrase. I was just to the north of London the other day, and it turns out, like a lot of people these days, I am in fact Luton intolerant. And of course, you do that anywhere in the middle of England.
Yeah.
It's very, very simple because it's just rhyming, actually. It's not even... It doesn't bear too much examining.
Talk to me about, but I am in fact... Just with that, we could just dissect that one. Just stay with that for a minute. The rhythms of that. It did need a "but I am in fact." Why?
I think it would have been too quick. I was just in North London, but it turns out, like a lot of people these days, I think it leads you into thinking I'm having a normal conversation briefly.
Yeah, yes.
Rather than just a list of jokes.
Is that what you mean by selling the dummy? Like it assists the subterfuge.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like me just talking about stuff just for a second, just for half a second before you realise, no, he never talks about stuff. Yeah. He's just... And that's just enough.
Yes.
To do it. I mean, you could make it longer, but I don't think you need to.
And like a lot of people these days, because that makes the resolution even more satisfying, because it's an observation about a lot of people these days are gluten intolerant. That sort of differentiates it from a cracker joke or a lolly joke. It just is a bit of shading somehow that's part of the subterfuge.
Yeah.
But also it assists the story in the right direction. It is so funny because with the I am in fact, I flatter myself to think that is what I would have done with that line if it was like that and I heard someone say it. I was like, oh, you could put a pause there, or I would say it like that. And I think that for me just comes from vibes. It just comes from mouthfeel of there's the elasticity of me in the room, and I just think they need another little beat. And we wouldn't, I don't think, without this podcast and others like it, we wouldn't interrogate that. You just sort of know somehow.
Yes.
And do you think that those kind of antennae for knowing that, have they changed? Did they change it? Did you do all of that sort of learning, that rhythmic elasticity relation to an audience learning? Does that mature and improve, or is that something you sort of learned in the first 5 years and carried with you?
I think it
that is one of the most pretentious, complex questions I've ever asked about joke writing, and this is the place for it.
I think the sense of the number of words and commas you need gets better as you do it more. And so you don't want to have a sentence that longer than it needs to be. But I probably said last time that it's all about putting a cartoon in people's heads.
Yes.
And then pulling the carpet at the end of it.
Yeah.
So it just... I just think that extra piece of normal language, because people are going, the worst thing that can happen to me in a way is that people are ahead of me. And so we can see what's coming. But the more just enough sentence to sound like a normal conversation with, you say, oh, that was a joke. That's not. Ah, that is.
Yeah.
So just enough. Trying to think of something else.
Well, there's the very first joke on Milton Impossible is the Colin joke.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a really good example of knowing that the audience will catch on, or sort of you deliberately give them enough space for most of them to catch on.
Yes,
and it's like you're funneling their understanding of it through pausing and leaning into it. Can you just tell us that joke so people know what I'm talking about?
I haven't done it for a while. It goes something like, if I understand history correctly, years ago in this country, everyone with the name Colin was rounded up and transported to places like Canada, India, Australia, in an attempt to colonize the world.
Yeah.
Right. But quite often what happens is when I say after, in an attempt, and you get some people laughing and I say, are we there yet?
Yes. Yeah.
Here we go. All together now. In an attempt to colonize the world. And sometimes people will join in with that, or just, it's quite a good one to start with, because it sets a tone for the rest of the evening.
Well, it sets a tone, but it also establishes that you'd better listen. Because what it really does at the beginning of that, I think it's such a great choice of it. It's such a deliberate choice for a first joke.
Yeah.
Because most of the audience will hear, a small part of the audience already get it. And they'll go, oh, God, we better pay attention to this. And that struck me as very intentional to open with one where you know they're going to do that. You've done that joke X number of times before you place it at the beginning of the tour. So you are going, this joke is a funnel which is going to light up how much they're paying attention, and also establish a rhythm whereby some of the clever kids get it in advance, and I react to that and they see me be comfortable with it. So there's like a huge amount of sort of information and deliberation in the selection of that as an opening line.
Absolutely. And it's quite nice. It's a long line as well, rather than a short line. It's like setting a scene, and you can come on and declare it and go quite slowly with it, because that's the other thing. As you say, you're literally drawing people in, and if you're speaking slowly as well, it's a big signpost to where we're going.
There is something happened on the video that I saw, which presumably happens a lot, which is that a certain proportion of the audience sort of go, "Ray!" and like that would infuriate me. I wondered how you felt about that, because that to me, it's not a heckle per se, but it's sort of the noise one would make to imply, "Hey, you didn't catch me out. That was a bit obvious." I mean, there's almost like subtext to that, "Ray!" And I wondered how you felt about the noise.
Good in general. There is often in my shows that kind of pantomime feel. That, I mean, I like to think it's slightly highbrow pantomime, but
like those famous highbrow pantomimes you get.
you know, we all know them. And because also I get quite a wide range of children, teenagers, not teenagers, 20-somethings who saw me on Mock the Week once or something, but then Radio 4 as well. That's a real mixture. And it's quite an effort sometimes to take them all with me. Yeah. You know, mentioning something that only one of those sections will get.
Oh, yes, good point. With gluten intolerance, it's a newer thing, but it's been around for 10 years, but it's new enough that it won't leave anyone behind.
Yeah, so it's the subject material has to be quite mainstream, even though it might not be tackled in a mainstream way, I like to think. Or some of it is. Some of it's really straightforward. And you can almost feel the crowd go, is that it? Yep, that's it. We're moving on now.
So is that someone who's like, are you expecting the people in the are you anticipating that the people in the audience who are the long-term fans and the hardest to surprise, are those the same group of people as the ones going, "Ray"?
Yeah, I think so.
It strikes me that's quite a male noise as well, isn't it? And I think I don't want to put thoughts in their head or words in their mouths, but I do think there is some part of like, "Ray," because they're sort of going, "You didn't catch me out. I get this guy." Do you know what I mean? There's some information being transmitted there.
Yes, and there's a slight feel too of someone dropping a plate in the cafeteria. Wherever you go.